The 8th of November 1942. What does it feel like to crawl through cold sand, soaked with blood and seawater, while men scream for morphine? Shells tear the night apart, and you realize the next body you touch might already be dead. Because that was the reality at dawn when Operation Torch began, and Allied troops stormed the shores of North Africa in one of the most chaotic and morally complex landings of the Second World War. A campaign meant to open a second front against Axis forces, but which immediately descended into confusion, fear, and raw survival as American and British soldiers faced not only enemy fire but the terrifying uncertainty of fighting former allies of Vichy France. And among the first to step into this nightmare were combat medics who carried no weapons, only bandages, plasma, and faith in their training. Men whose war was measured not in territory gained, but in heartbeats saved. As waves crashed against landing craft near Algiers, Oran, and Casablanca, bullets punched through thin steel hulls, and medics jumped into chest-deep water already turning dark from oil and blood, dragging wounded men behind dunes while tracer rounds stitched the sand around them. One medic later recalling how he slipped on something soft and realized it was a severed arm, still warm, belonging to a soldier he had spoken to minutes earlier. And this horror did not pause for courage or fear, because there was no time to process it. Only time to act, to stuff gauze into sucking chest wounds, to whisper to boys barely old enough to shave that they had to keep breathing while artillery boomed overhead. And the chaos of Torch was unlike later, more organized landings, because this was America's first major amphibious assault of the war. Mistakes were everywhere, radios failed, units landed miles off target, and medics often found themselves alone, surrounded by wounded and dead, unsure whether the next silhouette in the smoke would be friend or enemy. And as fighting erupted inland around places like Port Lyautey and the airfields near Tafarui, medics followed riflemen into olive groves and stone farmhouses where sudden close-quarters combat exploded without warning. Grenades bouncing across dirt floors, walls collapsing, screams echoing in tight spaces. And one documented account describes a medic entering a farmhouse after gunfire stopped, expecting wounded, only to find silence and bodies piled in corners. Flies already gathering, the smell of cordite mixing with iron and decay. A scene that haunted him long after the war. And still the work continued because wounded soldiers kept coming, some burned from aircraft fuel, others shredded by machine gun fire from French positions that had not yet stood down. And the ethical tension of Torch added another layer of strain as medics treated enemy wounded alongside Allied soldiers, sometimes under fire from both sides, bound by the Geneva Convention and their own humanity. And the desert itself became an enemy, with heat by day, cold by night. Sand clogging wounds, infections setting in fast, forcing medics to improvise with limited supplies, boiling instruments over small fires, rationing morphine, making impossible decisions about who could be saved and who could only be made comfortable. And the horror was not always loud, because sometimes it was the quiet moments after a firefight, when a medic knelt beside a man who had no visible wounds, but whose eyes stared blankly at nothing, shock having shut him down completely, and the medic could do nothing but hold his hand until life slipped away. And as Torch pushed forward and Axis resistance stiffened later in Tunisia, the lessons learned in North Africa were paid for in blood, with medics often targeted despite their red crosses, crawling forward under fire to reach the wounded because leaving them meant death. And one after-action report describes a medic who made 6 trips across open ground, swept by machine gun fire to evacuate wounded men, each time expecting to be hit, each time choosing to go anyway. Because that was the quiet heroism of Operation Torch, rarely photographed, rarely celebrated. Men who fought without firing a shot, yet faced the same terror as anyone on the line. And the psychological toll was immense as nightmares followed them. Visions of faces they could not save, the sound of gurgling breaths, The smell of blood baked into desert sand, horror that did not fade when the guns fell silent. And by the time major combat operations of Torch ended later in November 1942, the Allies had gained their foothold. But the cost was written into the memories of those medics who learned what modern war really meant before the world did. A war where courage was not always charging forward, but kneeling in the dark. Hands shaking, trying to keep another human alive while death searched for both of you. And that is the hidden side of Operation Torch. The classified feeling reality behind maps and timelines. Where endurance was pushed beyond normal limits. Where heroism existed in whispered reassurances and blood-soaked bandages. And where horror was not a story, but a constant presence. Lingering long after North Africa was secured. And as you picture those medics under fire on that November morning, surrounded by chaos, screams, and sand, ask yourself this one question that still chills historians today. When the war stripped everything away and left only fear, pain, and darkness, what kind of person do you become when saving one life means crawling straight into hell?